I experienced a lot of peer pressure from my friends my freshman and sophomore year about sleep because they would stay up all night, every night, and just hang out or watch movies or go get food or all of these things. And I wanted so desperately to sleep. I was so tired. I was so tired from school. I was so tired from family. I was so tired all the time. And they would guilt me about going to sleep. Even when I was sick, when I had the flu, when I had sinus infections, they would be like, how can you be sleeping right now? It's the only time you can hang out with us. I can't believe you would be doing this. And it made me feel so guilty and so horrible all the time because if I slept, then I was making my friends mad at me. And if I didn't sleep, I was ruined for the next day.
A lot of college first years feel very lonely in their first couple weeks or months of college. So a lot of those feelings are taken out with eating. I eat a lot of my feelings.
A lot of parents thought I was anorexic, and I didn't know what that meant back then, but I hear them say that to my teachers or to each other. And sometimes they tell their kids to avoid me because they were afraid that I would influence them not to eat.
Sometimes I feel like that I'll just be on a diet forever. Like I just feel like it'll just never end. And I know some people feel that way, but you know, with the scale and the pressure and the social media, it's just all getting worse.
When it comes to self-harm, I guess what happened was a hatred of myself and a hatred of my body and who I was. And that came from the comparison of everyone else in the outside world to myself. And I wasn't understanding that it's okay to be just you and to look different from the models on TV and to look different from the actors that you see in the world. So when it came to that hatred was just very powerful.
I don't date, I don't go out to parties, I don't really do all that. And I think that's healthy for me in some ways, but also kind of unhealthy for me in others.
Just in the whole gay scene, I guess, the homosexual environment, you know, there's a standard that you have to kind of live up to, you know. It's funny because a lot of these men, they're like, oh, I'm looking for a straight acting, taller than 6 foot, muscular, white man, you know, no minorities, blah, blah, blah. So it's just, I mean, it's crazy to think that already we're a group of marginalized people and that we are marginalizing ourselves more, you know? I mean, I think it's very, very, very just pervasive, this idea that you have to look a certain way, you have to be a certain way.
Actually, I think most of my life has been on like little sleep, and mostly in high school I used to go to classes on like 2 hours of sleep.
Research has consistently demonstrated that variable sleep patterns, along with other students' practices such as high media usage, contribute significantly to poor sleep hygiene and sleep problems. Additionally, entering college constitutes a major life transition, often entailing leaving home, encountering demanding classes, and facing new social contexts. This transitional period is often related to increased levels of stress, which in turn can elicit profound and lasting effects on sleep. I have always felt pretty strongly about sleep. Being a college athlete here at Rollins, we have morning workouts, we have afternoon practices. I'm in a fraternity. There's a lot going on, so I feel like sleep can be overlooked in my life.
When students are sleep deprived, sleep cycles are disrupted and their bodies respond by decreasing their ability to concentrate and complete complex tasks. The consequences of sleep deprivation and daytime sleepiness are especially problematic to college students and can result in lower grade point averages, increased risk of academic failure, compromised learning, impaired mood, and increased risk of motor vehicle accidents. I've heard over the years a lot of different people tell me that they pull all-nighters and that it works for them and that's how they study best and it doesn't affect them negatively. But I've read multiple articles like that say that sleep kind of resets your body and supports all of its systems.
I don't think a lot of people, place any value on sleep because it's seen as something that you're not doing anything productive, you're not getting your work done.
Sleep hygiene practices include regular bedtimes and wake-up times, limiting noise and light levels, maintaining comfortable room and body temperatures, avoiding caffeine, alcohol, nicotine intake prior to bed, and maintaining a healthy diet with exercise. I would say that Rollins has a pretty horrible culture when it comes to sleep. And the library being open 24 hours, and a lot of students, they need that, aspect to get all of their work done. But I think that a lot of students don't prioritize their sleep, and I've seen that throughout my 4 years here. I must say I can partake in that. When I first got to school, I wasn't used to the workload.
The lowest point that I've had my sophomore year was when I had the flu, 2 different strains of the flu for about 5 weeks. And I was trying to keep up with my courses, I was trying to sleep, I was trying to get better, I was trying to work so I could have money to buy groceries. And my friends were berating me for being in bed all day watching TV when I was so sick that I couldn't even get up and walk, basically. And nothing has felt worse than that. Nothing has felt worse.
Social media impacts the way that you see yourself because you're looking at the ideal images of other people and how they want to be seen. There's so much control when you're posting a picture of yourself. You can make it perfect, you can tweak different things, and you can't do that in real life.
Social media definitely impacts how I see myself because when I'm on it, I'm constantly comparing my life to other people's and my appearance to other people's. And I have to kind of cognitively bring myself back and remember that it's all just everybody's best angle when they're all full of makeup, and it's not real life, it's just completely distorted. And you can kind of get into this rabbit hole of she has great skin and she has a nice body, but like it's probably edited and it's probably has a nice filter on it. It's not really real life. A professor I had recently told me that with social media, people don't produce as much oxytocin, which is the bonding chemical produced when you bond with somebody, and that really hit home. That was really crazy to hear. It's definitely an addiction, and it's kind of innate now, and when I don't have my phone on me, I'm like, where's my phone? It's not, it's like part of me now. It's not even a completely separate entity, and it's weird.
Social media gives a fake sense of community, and that artificial relationship that people have with their phones or with the internet tends to take away from their personal relationships.
Every time I go to a bar and it's just people on their phones, with their friends talking, but on their phones while they're talking. I don't know. It's crazy. And I also do that, so I can't say I don't, but it's like, how are you supposed to meet people if you just sit on your phone? I don't know.
Freshman year, second semester, I lost my mom, and I was taking 5 classes, and I was doing research on the side, and a lot of things were going on. So it put me in a very stressful environment.
I also over the years developed a perfectionistic nature. If I wasn't the best, then I felt like I was the worst. If I didn't get 100 on the project, I felt like I failed it.
My low point was probably the fall semester of my sophomore year after I was taking organic chemistry for the first time, and I was maybe going to have to change my major if I didn't get a C in the class. And the averages on the test were in the 40s for everyone, and I thought I was gonna have to change my major, and I've never been so stressed every day for my life. And it wasn't because I wasn't putting the effort in. I was doing problems every day. I was going to the professor twice a week and tutoring. And it's so stressful when you do everything right and you still can't get the grades that you need to keep scholarships to stay in school.
I've definitely had panic attacks during practice or like a game. One of my biggest panic attacks was when I was very young, like in like elementary school, and I was like laying in bed, and I remembered that I didn't do my Spanish homework, and I couldn't speak Spanish, and like I was just like having a panic attack, and like went to my dad like crying, like asking him for help.
It feels almost like the room is crushing me. It feels like I can't get up and sit up. It feels like I have to lay down all the time. Sometimes they get really bad depending on the situation where I feel like I can't breathe.
Feels like I'm being compressed, like I'm between two walls and the walls are just coming in and I can't do anything about it. Going into my classes the first day, I'm usually really an introvert, and in my high school it was so big that I could just disappear in the crowd. When I had to do presentations in front of large audiences, I would get really upset. One time I actually vomited. And that was a pretty low point because I did that in front of people and everyone stared at me and I felt so embarrassed.
So I personally, I'm gay, so it's been very challenging growing up, and my family knows now, but just being able, just holding that back, you know. And I kind of just broke, and I had, I guess, maybe an anxiety attack. I don't know. I started crying in front of my mom. She's always asked me, you know, what's wrong? You know, do you feel comfortable enough to talk to me? And I just broke down to my mom. I just felt very vulnerable at that time. I felt very weak, and it was just a very, very, very relieving moment to be able to come out like that to my mom and, you know, say that I'm overwhelmed. I don't think I'm in the best place right now.
When it comes to mental health, a low point for me was the beginning semesters when I didn't know how to manage that time. And I was drinking frequently, and with this came a lack of sleep. And when I started getting no sleep, I started becoming sad. And when I started becoming sad, I started to drink. And when I started to drink, I'd become sad and I wouldn't sleep. So there was a cycle that I got into where the whole environment of college just took over me, and I felt like I was being crushed.
So the body type that I have is, pretty long and lanky. And I think it benefited me in a lot of sports as a kid. But at the same time, I faced criticism as a kid. It was oftentimes I'd have my friends' parents say, you know, whether or not I saw them, they give me a hug and, oh man, put some meat on your bones, come on.
I had to go through different stages in high school where I was uncomfortable and have a lot of struggles with with accepting myself. Certainly being very skinny. That was one of the factors just because of how involved I was with sports and running. I was always like a skinny dude.
I guess the low point would be in elementary and middle school when I was underweight, and I struggled with getting past, even when I was healthy weight, I was just on the margin, and I struggled with gaining weight and how to do that because I just didn't like to eat a lot. And I wasn't depressed, I just didn't want to eat a lot. And so sometimes I would skip meals because I just didn't feel that hungry. I could have been anxious too though, because as a kid, I really struggled with my learning disability. And I couldn't be in the same class with other students until 6th grade. So whenever my grades would fall, I think I would eat a lot less because I got nervous that I was going to be placed back into the IEP setting.
As a child growing up, I was very overweight, and I was teased a lot in school because I read a lot of books and didn't really engage socially. And once I had my growth spurt and went through puberty and stuff, I became a normal person and I lost a lot of weight. And once I lost that weight, I became obsessed with keeping it off, to the point where I was weighing myself 3 times a day and berating myself for everything that I ate, and I would almost starve myself at a certain point. So that over dedication and that concentration on the tiniest of details, the tiniest of half a pound in the difference between morning and night would just send me over the edge.
My story for what undermines and continues to undermine my body positivity really started my freshman year of college. It was very difficult with the quote-unquote freshman 15 that I gained, because I was a very healthy weight in high school, at least my definition of a healthy weight. And then my freshman year, I gained a lot of weight. It was very difficult to see everybody around me who either didn't gain weight or kind of moved on the same scale as I did, but looked better.
When I was a sophomore, I was told that I had high blood pressure and I was super confused, and how do you kind of take that in as a 16-year-old girl? And I asked her if it was because I was a little bit overweight, and she said that 10 pounds wouldn't hurt. So I walked out of there. I was embarrassed to tell my mom. I kind of just kept it a secret, and I started losing weight on my own. And I started seeing results. People started noticing me. I went back to the doctor and she was thrilled. I started throwing away all these clothing that I didn't need anymore, buying new clothing, buying bathing suits. And it started to get to the point where I was turning these healthy habits into very restrictive eating habits. And it came to the point where I was going on, pro-Ana websites that really trigger women with anorexia to not eat. So I was following diet plans that were 500 calories a day, 600 calories a day. I got down to such a low weight. I went back to the doctor and everyone was, you don't need to lose any more weight, it's okay. And it kind of started to become an addiction. I had to lose weight. I had to go on the scale 3-4 times a day, even after going to the bathroom. My boyfriend and I remember we broke up because simple things like going out to dinner together just weren't the same. And when I wasn't eating, you don't realize how much food really brings you closer with people. And because I wasn't eating, a lot of those relationships that I had definitely turned down the wrong road, and I was lonely and I needed help. And I was embarrassed to ask my mom because I had come from, just being a little bit overweight to being this person, this crazy monster that just wanted to get calories out every day. And that's definitely something that I still struggle with today. In high school, from the environment with all the women and from the pressure of social media and going to college, having to be fit for college, that definitely really took over my life in more ways than I was expecting.
So my exposure to binge drinking I feel like I've been pretty exposed throughout my life. My parents drank a lot, so I was always seeing them, and that kind of gave me, from a very young age, kind of this stand back kind of approach to alcohol, which I appreciate. So I think seeing that at an early age, it kind of made me able to make better decisions.
I was exposed to binge drinking at the age of 7th grade, I think, the first time I took a sip of alcohol, and it wasn't just, have a beer, have a sip of this cocktail. It was, drink this vodka and chase it with this soda or whatever just to get purely drunk. It wasn't for any enjoyment. So that was like the first exposure I had at a party.
I'd actually had a lot of people over my house during my senior year. After I graduated this summer, my parents were out of town for basically all of summer, so I'd have people over all the time. Actually, one of the times a lot more people came to my house than I expected, and the cops ended up being called. And the cops actually came into my house, and they, where are your parents? They made me call my parents. My parents had to send my godparents over, and it just kind of turned into like a huge fiasco. And I really didn't necessarily realize what I was doing and the consequences of what I was doing. I actually, thinking about it, there were underage kids in my house, in my parents' house, drinking alcohol.
These behaviors impacted my life because when I came to college, I actually still had the old habits I gained from high school. And while my friends grew out of this partying lifestyle, I continued it and kept drinking more and more. The low point in these behaviors for me were when I started to notice that I was drinking alone. I wasn't at parties, I wasn't doing anything, and I was drinking almost every night behind my parents' back in my bedroom by myself.
Rollins was kind of known for partying, and I did have an older brother here, so I kind of knew that that was a thing, but I wasn't sure until I actually experienced coming here. And Monday night, people were going to like Margarita Monday, Tequila Tuesday, Wine Down Wednesday, Thirsty Thursday. Like, it's just all these words that I had never heard before. And I mean, my first thought was, how do people get homework done?
I think the drinking behavior at Rollins is the most serious and unhealthy problem we have here. I have so many friends that go out Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and get blackout drunk and don't remember anything. And that's 3 days of your week that you just don't remember. It seems crazy to me.
A couple girls went out to a party, and the next day I heard this girl had to get her stomach pumped, and she was my friend, and no one was there for her in the hospital, and she drank way too much. And the thing was that the guys were the ones that were kind of giving her the alcohol. We were freshmen, we were naive, we didn't know.
My sophomore year, I had been studying all day, and I went across the hall to visit with one of my friends and talk to them, and they had just come back from an all-day party, and she was just absolutely incontinent, and she was missing some of her clothes. She was practically foaming at the mouth and couldn't keep her eyes open, and her roommates were just trying to get her to eat bread and drink water and go to sleep, and she very clearly had alcohol poisoning. So I picked her up because she was tiny. I picked her up and I took her downstairs and I put her in the car and I took her to the emergency room down the street. And they told me that if we had brought her in like an hour later, that she would have died.
So alcohol poisoning at my high school impacted me in my life because there was a really bad case in my high school. In my graduating year, 4 kids died from alcohol poisoning. And one of them was a boy I knew. And I was part of journalism, so we were doing interviews, and the family agreed to be interviewed for it. And I went over to their house, and it was just really upsetting. I talked to the boy, his name is Drew, his twin, Kyle, about it, and Kyle was like, I didn't see any problems. I was intoxicated too, but normally we never drink this much. I just thought that he was tired and kind of grumpy, but then he never woke up the next day. And that was just really hard to hear. And then his parents were like, he'll never get to go to college or have a girlfriend or get married. And hearing all that, I just realized that it's not worth the risk to drink alcohol, that there's just too much that could go wrong.
I would say one of the most serious addictive behaviors would be with Xanax. I think especially when students will mix them with alcohol, there are some very negative effects, and I've personally been seeing students go to the hospital because of mixing stuff like this, and so it's very dangerous.
Definitely, I mean, juuling. I think that's pretty bad, and I know a lot of people who honestly will save money for Juul pods than using money to go buy groceries. And I know a bunch of people like that, which is really concerning because Juuls are horrible for you.
I was in one of my classes and someone said, yeah, I had to write a 10-page paper last night in 6 hours. So I was like, okay, so I popped a couple Addies and I typed it out.
My whole family is prescribed to Vyvanse. My older sister is prescribed to Adderall. And my little sister is in 10th grade. I have a freshman in college and my mom, and we are all prescribed to Vyvanse. To give you an idea of how powerful this medication is, the DEA categorizes Vyvanse as a Schedule II substance, the same category that includes cocaine and morphine. Taking this pill for the past 8 years, and that I just found out that it's in the same category with cocaine and morphine. That's super concerning.
Something that just was very in my face when I got to Rollins was Rollins is a coke school. Everyone here does cocaine. That's what they look for in fun. You know, that's how they stay up all night. You know, so it was very in my face coming to Rollins about, I guess, our student population's like cocaine use and drug use. You know.
My freshman year, I'm not gonna say like his name or anything, but this kid who was on like cocaine tried jumping out of a window because he was like suicidal. I was like in the room and like he tried to run through the window, and like the bars, like he went through the glass, but the bars stopped him from going outside. That was kind of crazy. He was a really good friend of mine, like freshman year, and he ended up leaving Rollins.
I focused in my culture jams on many fast food restaurants. I wanted to touch upon the reality behind fast food and some of the health concerns.
With my creative project, I really wanted to talk about the different spectrums that people have classified me in with being gay or straight. People have said, "You surprised me that you're gay," or "Oh, I can see it now." Like, "Oh, like when you were doing that, I kind of gave it away." It's like, what does that mean?
When I got up in the morning and I, put on a cape, long cardigan, whatever you want to call it, And I would look in the mirror and I would say, I'm gonna make today a cape day. I'm gonna be confident. I'm gonna embody what it means to wear a cape, you know, superhero, video game character, you know, all that. In the text of Make Today a Cape Day, it says, what mask are you wearing today? Because I realized I'm literally just wearing a mask. I'm hiding who I am.
So this image is probably somewhat autobiographical because it does represent how before college mainly, I used to be very sensitive to things that I saw on social media and people's comments, how that affected how I saw myself when I looked in the mirror and how it was pretty distorted and just not reality. And if I look at myself now, it's kind of turning my back on those things and doing what is more positive for me.
So for my creative piece I did for the first portion of the class is a picture of me on my scale, and I decided to put a little piece of paper on it that says try harder, because I don't know if I've ever gone on this scale and actually like felt good about myself. I can probably think of maybe 2 times throughout maybe the thousands of times I've been on the scale where I'm like, wow, that is so good. Even when I was losing weight, I was like, oh, you only lost, 5 pounds this week? Try harder, do better.
The theme that I was trying to convey in my creative project was just kind of just for myself and for my friends to be able to reflect on our behaviors, on what we like to do for fun, the stress we put ourselves under in order to have fun, the inclination to do these drugs, to drink, and I just wanted to be able to reflect on at what cost, why am I doing this? I'm not thinking about the future effects. What is this gonna do to me in the long run?
I chose the topic of fast fashion because I've always been super interested in the fashion industry. Until recently, I was not aware of the whole dark side of the industry regarding fast fashion. And so I chose the topic for my creative project because I wanted to hopefully bring awareness to the viewer, which would be a Western consumer.
People just don't think about it when they buy like a $30 t-shirt and then cut it up for an event and then throw it out, how that's affecting people across the globe. So it kind of just shocked me, like the factory deaths, the factory collapses, people's lack of care.
The social media fast was an extra credit opportunity in your class, and I really enjoyed it because I didn't realize how much I actually look at social media in a day, and it creeps up on you a lot. And after that, I actually deleted Facebook off my phone. It was very productive because I wasn't looking at social media all the time, and I slept better. So I wasn't looking at the flash on my phone. I felt better about myself.
I have always been an anxious person, and so coming to Rollins, I hadn't had the resources that were available at Rollins, like CAPS. They're super helpful. I've gone to them, and I feel like it's a normal thing, and people, honestly, I've talked to my friends and they all go too, and so it's not really a thing that's looked down upon, which I appreciate.
My parents and my family, my friends have noticed that just the stress of college itself has been overwhelming for me at some times, and just it's my senior year. I'm also working with my family. I'm kind of getting groomed to, work into my dad's business and, handle it as well as he does. It's very stressful. You have to take the time to just think of your mental health. 5 years ago, I would have thought, oh, going to a psychiatrist or going to a therapist, that means I'm crazy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, it's good to be able to go to those resources and kind of just work on yourself.
I work out pretty regularly, which is a newer practice for me, and I found that it really alleviates a lot of stress and anxiety for me, and it just completely elevates my mood.
I like to explore different places, and I just like walking more than going to the gym and going on a treadmill. I like being out in nature.
I do yoga every day now, whether it's for 5 minutes or for 50 minutes or for 2 hours. It's definitely something that I have seen, you know, not only a physical change, but mentally, it just feels so good to do that.
When your body processes something like a hamburger bun, it creates certain chemicals that go to your brain that are just proven to cause fatigue, inflammation, certain mental disorders like depression, anxiety. So just to keep that in mind, eating healthy is way more important than many people think.
The water we drink is contaminated with iron and all of these minerals, and when those go to our brain, they oxidize just as they would out in the regular elements, and these antioxidants are effectively counter all of the oxidization of these many minerals that are in our brain, and those plaques build up, and that's what develops these early onset memory loss. Having family members who've had dementia and Alzheimer's, seeing that the value in how we can combat this early in life, and I think that communicating that to these college students and how they really can benefit themselves, not only now, but later in life. I think that's something that's really important and students can, you know, take on to help themselves.
If you're spending all of your time on social media following these fitness bloggers and these people that have like the body ideals of our society, but they spend all day, every day working on that. And of course you're gonna feel bad, and of course you're gonna feel like you're never going to obtain those body ideals that are so important to our society. And if you do other things on social media, if you look at cooking options and healthy eating and things that inspire you and books you want to read, it can be such a good tool.
Another school, a Division III school similar to our size, they actually cut off all of their 8 a.m. classes to foster the students' sleep habits, better sleep habits, translating not only to better test scores, but also athletic performance in their athletic teams.
So I'm hoping to move to Italy to study food studies and kind of bring, come back, well, maybe come back. I haven't decided yet, but I definitely want to educate about the issues in our food system and how we can make them better through the slow food movement, through just one individual, deciding to make little changes like eating less meat, being more aware of where it comes from, buying stuff at farmers markets rather than in Publix.
The process that goes into animal products, I never really took into consideration how crazy it is, and I'm like, wow, I used to put that stuff in my body. I don't know how I did that, and ever since I've been vegan for about a month now, and I feel so much better.
Watching the entire scene of going into the slaughterhouse and watching the lifespan, if you even want to call it a lifespan, of certain, of a chick to a chicken that grew up in a tray that gets thrown out onto the ground, that's just fed corn and feed the entire day, and then it's slaughtered. That's it. That's its life, and it's disgusting. There's no other way to describe it. It's terrible, and corporations make money on the back of slaughtering animals. It hits you hard. It's something that in our culture is only going to continue to get worse too, unless it's completely stopped.
I actually have a little sister who is 16, and she has an eating disorder as well. She's very, very skinny right now, and she goes to an all-girls school. Whenever I try to tell her, Gracie, eating is good. Guys like, men like women that have meat on their bones. No one likes to grab bones. And she, will look at me and says, well, you didn't eat when you were in high school, so why should I listen to you? And I guess she has a point, but now I'm trying to use these tools to help her and to help me, and, to
just get her on the right track, because she's going through a lot of hard things, and these, this eating disorder that she's battling is, also kind of fueling the fire for suicide.
One really deep story I can get into is on my shoulder, I have a tattoo of an octopus. And the octopus does not mean anything, but under the octopus, I did used to self-harm. And covering those scars with a tattoo has been such an amazing experience for me, because when I look at that piece, I go, there's a memory there, a bad memory, but on top of it is a good memory.